Alright guys, so we're going to take it for a ride and we'll do everything from startup, acceleration. Of course your boost pressure is here. It should get to 10. That's our air-fuel ratio. And watch for when boost comes on here. We're going to try to get the right wheel that's not clipped so we can get boost to come on a little bit sooner. But I'm estimating it comes on right around 4,500. And so yeah. If we can come on a little bit earlier, say by 4,000, late threes, that'd be great. That's actually what I envisioned when I ran this system. I didn't want to come on too soon because of the gearing first and second. So I think 38, somewhere in there, 4,000 be just right. We're going to let it warm up a little bit. Alright, well the good news is while this thing's warming up, I was able to get the radio back repaired by Ching Chang Chong and did a good job because it's now showing, it's now picking up. I got internet on here and all that good stuff. And on the Torque Pro, you can go into here. This is live data. The cool thing here is the knock count doesn't really change, but I was monitoring the knock, the degrees of knock while I was under boost, none whatsoever. So we're good as far as that goes. It shows you actual timing, the intake air temperature, and I'll explain something on here in a second. You're going to see if I show, this gets pretty high. Say the highest I've seen is 115, 120. You say, well, I thought you moved the turbo to the back, you should be seeing a lot cooler temps, and that's true. I forgot that by running the pipe close to the engine like I have it by the oil filter, then it hugs it all the way back up from the front crank pulley. I should have put some of that gold reflective barrier on there. I will. That's the only place it could be picking up heat from. I've got the exhaust wrapped, so any heat there is going to be moving along from the car. Shouldn't add any heat to it at all, but that's the main place it's adding heat from. But the cool thing in here is you can go in, once you go in and you add the predefined set of parameters, you get current misfire, historical misfire, injector pulse width for cylinders 1 and then 2, and of course with the Saturn, I believe it fires 1 and 3 and 2 and 4, so whatever this one's showing is a good gauge of what's happening. But I've got misfire counts now, and most times you only have that on enhanced scan tools, and this app is like $5, the Torque Pro. So you have to go into your settings. I'm not sure if it's here or not. No. You go into settings. Show you. Get out of here. Settings right here. Oop, let me focus. Into settings, and then you go down to manage extra PIDs and sensors. You go into here, and when you do it, you can go up to here and select add a predefined set, and it's got Chrysler, Jeep, Mercedes, other, and so forth. There's Pontiac, GM, Opel. You don't have Saturn in here, so I just picked Pontiac, GM, Opel, and I did not have individual misfire before, but now I have misfire counts, and so that's really nice to have, so you can determine what cylinder is misfiring. Otherwise you got to have the factory scan tool, and most people don't naturally. So most of the other, if you buy like an Innova or one of the cheap Chinese ones on there that talk about enhanced data, it doesn't have that. So I think it's interesting that this little $4.50 deal will give you that. Now here's one other thing I'll show you. Go into the, you can add on, what are these things called? These are, they're like, they're add-ons. If you go to the Play Store, you'll see these offered. But Torque Scan, if you click on Torque Scan and come up here to the settings, PID scanner, it'll say press menu for scanning options, start scan, and so forth. It'll scan through this whole thing, and that's where you're going to get your enhanced data from. There's a knock detector you can run. I've got racing meter set up. I haven't got it on here yet. You can do graphing, which is pretty cool. Anyway, long story short, I just wanted to show you that this Torque app is pretty neat. You know, I'm sure maybe some of the other ones will do it, I don't know. This is the only one I have experience with, but I really do like this system. But anyway, just that little bit. And then the little rear mount camera. The image isn't too cool. You can go in and play with these grids on here. There's red, yellow, and this one here. It's an image. You know, it's not the greatest, but it's an image. So now as we sit here, look at the intake air temp, 127. So on a hot day, let's say this was a 90-degree day where I'm pulling air in from under the hood, yeah, it'd probably be higher than that. So it's not that it's terrible that it's like that, but I know I can bring that down by putting that gold barrier on there like I have. So that we'll do that. Now, driving this thing, let me arrange this so you can see the air fuel. There we go. It's noisy. I don't have any door panels on. The rear seats aren't in. And so it's obviously a little more noisy than what it would normally be with all that stuff in it. So I'm going to talk loud just in case you can't hear me. But the goal of this is just to kind of let you see where boost comes on at, and all the while knowing that this turbo was what I had laying around. This is what I wanted to use. I believe that the boost lag kind of condemnation of these kits isn't warranted, because I haven't seen that. What I find is, like in my case, yes, would I like the boost to come on a little sooner? I would, but I know why that is with this turbo, and that is that turbine wheel is clipped. And I've showed you a picture of that before. So I've got someone helping me, and these people are actually over in the UK. You can't get any help from anybody anymore around here. I don't know what the problem is, but anyway, it's a Garrett turbo. It's a common, well, I say common, it's a T831 T04E. And why everybody seems to pretend like this is some kind of unknown animal. But anyway, these folks are helping me. I just sent over I had to let them know what the bore of the outlet of the turbine housing was so they can know for sure. So I just sent that over. So I'm going to get the wheel, and I'm going to break that turbo down and replace that wheel. We should see then the boost come on a lot quicker instead of it where it's at now. So as you can see, I mean, the thing, it drives normal just like anything else. And keep in mind, the only fuel control I have here is the Veggie rising rate fuel pressure regulator. Everybody laugh. It's an end to a means to an end, I guess you can say. But so what we're trying to do now is I want to make sure I've got my boost where I want it. I want to kind of exhaust and see what is the limitations here of the stock pump. I say the stock pump, the pump I'm running, the injectors I'm running, and see what the computer's willing to control out when I start it up. I have bigger injectors that I could use, but like I said, it would run really horrible on cold start, and you got all that fuel not being burnt going down into the oil, you know, as it's washing the cylinders. That could wear out the engine's rings faster, and that's not something I'm willing to have happen, obviously. So we'll get out here on this road here, and I'll give it a few hits and so forth, just kind of wake it up and show you. Till I get past the police station up here. That might be a wise thing. Now watch. I'll tell you, if you can't see it, I'll tell you when I got full boost. You'll see when boost comes on. I'll let you know when I max throttle, so you can know how long on, where it comes on, and that's too slow, you know, for me. It's not the turbo size, it's the wheel. So we do this again a little bit up higher so it'll get in the boost earlier. And here we go. Full throttle. I'm going to pull out the spark plugs and look at them, and I might have to re-gap them. I don't know if their gap's small enough for what we're doing. Feeling of me doing that, and all of a sudden you see a cop, that'd give me a heart attack messing around like this. Dicey to drive because of those tires. That thing's pulling it, and so, man, it's really aggressively pulling. You really got to put, that's why I'm not filming with that other, my cell phone thing, man. It gets dicey. You got to be all hands on deck. Wait till that wheel gets replaced. The boost will come on so much quicker. I'll have more of a power band there at that point too, instead of it just starting to come in right when I'm getting ready to shift. So that's going to be an exciting change. archaic. It's just the rising rate fuel pressure regulator, bit larger injectors, and of course the Walbro 255 high pressure pump. For timing control, there is none. I'm using the 8.5-to-1 compression pistons, along with a couple of step holder range plugs, highest octane gas I can get, along with the octane additive. And that's pretty much it. Just trying to keep the cylinder temperatures down and by having the cooler air going in. Right now the air intake is 122, and I've been beating up on it pretty bad. Yeah, so it's a pretty fun car. It always has been when I had the little T25 on there as well. Alright, so I'm getting into these flares now. So as you might have heard me talk about before, these flares are extra big. I say big, they have a large circumference to them, and the goal is to take this and make it fit correctly. Now, all the while remembering that the car is lowered as low as it'll go and hit most depressions in the road at most speed without hitting the fender. Okay, because the fender's not cut and I don't plan on cutting it. Because the only time I would want to do that is if I wanted to go lower, and I don't want to go lower. These lowering springs could go lower. The size of the wheels and tires could allow me to go lower, but the problem with that is underneath I've got pipes and return from the turbo oil feed going through, so I can't afford to go much lower and expect to hit something, high center something in the road and not just rip everything out from underneath my car. So I've got to keep it up high enough, and for me, the lip kit on here gives it the illusion of being lower than what it really is. But yeah, when I sit in this thing, I got to basically just fall into it. So it's low enough for me. Okay, so then what happens is, if I'm going to keep this the height, and I'm going to, my lowering springs are set, then I know that by hitting bumps and turning corners and stuff like this, I'm not rubbing the stock body. Okay, so now the challenge comes in figuring out how low on the side of the car I can lower these down so that it gives me that shrouded look of the wheel. It's not a big factor back here, but up front I have to worry about turning the wheel because the lower it goes. And right now, as you can see up the front there, I'm not going to hit anything if I turn the wheel and make corners. And so that's kind of good. I like that. I would like it to be lower, but we're getting into the challenge that a lot of people get into when they do this sort of stuff, is you have a static ride height and a dynamic ride height. Static ride height, yeah, airbags, I could set this thing on the ground and it would look cool. But then there's the dynamic, where you're actually riding down the road and you're not having to, you know, get to the bank or get to somewhere where they got speed bumps and try to back out because you know you can't clear the speed bump. And so this is the challenge that you have of running a car like this in the everyday world. And so if I'm going to drive this every day, which not every day, but on days I do, I'm going to want to make sure I can clear stuff out there. So there's a limit to what you can do. So back here right now, I know predominantly in the car scene today, I'm just going to be frank with you, I do stuff that I like, not what everybody else likes. I do like wide body kits. I like fender flares. I wished Saturn was viable enough to have someone that would come out with a full bolt-on wide body kit. You know, that would be just what you see out there for Mustangs and Chargers and Challengers and all this stuff. But they don't, so we got to make our own. So, but one of the things I've been noticing on a lot of those kits is on the fender flares themselves, the flare itself does not totally encircle the tire to where it goes from, say, where it attaches like right here and then totally goes over the entire tire and then ends here down at the body line where in this case the Wings West kit's at. They almost always, I guess what the trend is they stop pretty high up, kind of like right here to where you have some of the tire exposed, you know, hanging out down there. And so in this case here, I've seen them actually go and end higher up, like on this line right here. I'm okay with some tire showing, but I do like the enveloped side of it more. One of the reasons I think they do that is not only for looks, but air, letting air escape. You're basically making a cup here for air to catch, like the sail on a ship. And so anything behind the wheel or tire, you're going to want to try to limit that. And so I think what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to pretty much, and this is what I'm trying to decide, where do I put this ending here? I'm going to have to work with some of this here, because as you can see here, there's a gap that I'm going to have to work with. I'm going to have to follow the contour of this thing here. If I want to forego that, then I need to bring this all the way up and terminate it here. So then you'll have it kind of angling up here like that, and then all this tire is exposed. That's kind of in line with what they're doing out there today, but again, it's what do I like? What do I want? Am I doing this to please everybody else, or am I doing this to get what I want from it? If I do that, and I take this and I bring it up to this line here, then it rotates or clocks this entire flare, and a lot of that down here is wasted. Now what I would do is, after I put it right here, you see the body line for the fender cover? That's where I would make my line, my cut. I would cut it straight out like that, so that if I were to need to take off this entire bumper, then that section would go with the bumper and the rest of the flare would stay on the car. And that's what a lot of them are doing now. It makes sense to do it like that. So I'd be making a cut straight at an angle straight, coming straight out like this right there. And then so that when I'm driving down the road and air is buffeting this, it's not sitting there shaking, I would put like a L-shaped bracket up underneath here to stabilize it on both sides. And then I would just take, once I make that cut, I would take this whole piece and rotate it back around, cut off the section that goes past this point, and then there's my fit, wherever I'd put it down there. I'd probably put it all the way right there at that juncture down there. So after thinking, I think I am going to terminate it up higher. If we walk back here, and you can actually see the tire sticks out, or you can see quite a bit of the tire right there. And so I think that's how I'm going to do this. That will allow me, because what I'll do at that point is I'm going to trim right here a little bit. That'll allow me to use this hole bolt right to the bumper cover, because if I go any further up this way, then it puts this bolt hole right on the center, on the seam here. Can't have that. So I can come up just a hair more, make the hole here for this, and then I'll cut my line just past that straight on out like that. Then I'll take this whole piece here, move it over to where down there I can go ahead and put my tip to terminate right into the right where the Wings West kit starts. And that'll give me this one back here. At least that's where I'm going to start. I hope it's right, because I don't want to mess this thing up. These things were like $220 a pair. So, and I think you have to buy them in a pair. So hopefully this goes good. So the question is, what's the best way to cut plastic and such? I watched a few YouTube videos. Of course, YouTube University. I saw one that put, it was using this type saw, and it had 21 TPI, or 21 teeth per inch, And this one has 24. I don't have one that's 21, but he also compared it to one that was specifically made for like plexiglass. And my goal is, and I guess it's like everybody's goal, because I kept seeing things talked about cutting plastic without melting and so forth. The gap that I'm wanting to create here is the same gap thickness thereabouts. That's this right here, because that's what's going to be melding on, or you know, it's what we're trying to mate up to. And so being that this has a few more teeth per inch, I think we'll be okay. But the trick is, you want something that's, I was going to use the Dremel, but trying to hold that Dremel tool and carry it down a straight line, and I'll be moving all like that, it's just going to give a real jagged cut. I'm looking for a clean line as I can. This will at least give me some stability to do that. And so this is the line that we're going to want to cut. So I'm hoping that it'll cut smoothly. This stuff's kind of trepidatious, I guess you could say, to use a big word. It makes me a little nervous because I don't really want to cut this thing, but I have to. So we're going to make our first cut. So first cut went right along the line. It was a nice smooth cut. It did melt some though. You could smell it. And of course you got to knock this stuff off and sand it, it looks like. But this is some pretty hard plastic. So I'll clean it up and show you here in just a second. Okay, so after cutting, it gave a pretty good cut. It did melt some, of course, on here. This is the side we're not going to be using. Matter of fact, a lot of this we're probably not going to be using. So I'm going to put this piece up on there, tape it up, and then go ahead and revolve it around to see where I'm going to need to cut it a second time, and we'll go from there. So just so you see what I'm talking about, here's the first cut piece. And of course it's up higher on the, we're terminating it on the fender line here. So it's going to be right here on this, the lip. Okay, so that's where it's going to be terminating, on the lip. And so we do have the typical exposed tire here, which is common with these kind of kits, and I don't mind the look of it. Like I said, if it was something that I didn't like, I would be doing what I wanted. But right now, that's the first cut, and as you can see, the cut falls in line with this seam here, because at this point, this will be where I cut the second, the overlap that comes over here. That's going to be where I cut the second, so that when I bolt it here and I bolt it here, if I ever need to take off this rear bumper clip, the lip is taped. I have that 3M tape on it with the bolts that are holding it on. All this can come off in one piece, so this piece will come with it. And then this one will be setting, this piece will remain, the piece that's here. Now also inside here, we got to look. And if you're using a flashlight here, which you have to, we can see that we're not hitting on the tire anywhere right here. And that's critical, obviously. And we have enough room right behind here so that we'll be able to use the plastic rivets to go into the body panels. I was going to use the riv nuts, but I'm fearful that as I use the tool to expand the riv nut, it's just going to spider crack from the center of that hole. I think the plastic is a good, we'll hold it well. I plan maybe we'll also use some double-sided tape, just like what we're going to use for the lip kit. Along with these plastic riv nuts, we'll make it nice and solid. Now, a concern I had, as you're driving down the road and air is picking up underneath here, I don't want this to be fluttering like this. So I can put a aluminum bracket. We'll make like a V portion to the bracket, and it will follow this down, and it will just brace it. It'll give it some bracing here, kind of give it some solid ability to kind of strengthen up so it doesn't sit there and flap like that going down the road. Okay, so I've got the second portion of this thing is cut, and I've almost got it fit on there. The trick is, you know, I talked about making just a straight cut from here to here, and I didn't think when you're joining two pieces like this together, you have it, when you put it on here, this thing is actually going, instead of being like this, it's actually like this. So you have to cut it at like at an angle. And with the mentality of you can always cut more instead of putting more back. That's what I worked with. And I can't do this holding the phone at the same time. But this piece, what I'm having to do is I'm having to just test cut it and trying to make this line as straight as I can and the gap as even as possible between the two so it looks right. But that's the gap that we're looking for, basically. Now, granted, this isn't a factory cut piece. This is a kit. I'm just doing this kit. It's not going to be 100% looking 100% great, but it shouldn't look too bad, and I can play with it as much as I can to sand down. I've done the gross cuts with that 22 or 23 tooth deal. It cuts really good. It doesn't melt very much at all. And then I'm just using some coarse grit and then some fine grit sandpaper to get that gap that I'm looking for. But this ends up sitting, if I can hold this right, you have to really torque it in the middle to get it to set the correct way. So I can't really do it while I'm holding it. I'll show it here in a minute. But what I wanted to show you now is the bits, or the plastic rivets. So this is the section that I didn't need. I cut out that much, so I had that much to play with. So what I'm going to do now, I've just got some extra pieces of plastic here, and I'm going to simulate this as being the body of the car, and then I'm going to find out what size makes the most sense, what fits on here, whether or not it'll mount securely or not. So I've got this bit assortment. I got these at Harbor Freight. It's a plastic rivet assortment. The gun you need isn't a regular rivet gun, it's this. This is for plastic rivets specifically. And so the goal here is we have to decide, you know, the bigger, stronger, probably be better, but keep in mind we're going to be mounting these at multiple places along the ridge here. So I'm thinking that this size here is 5mm by 15.8. So I'm thinking about the head of this thing. And then the recess that we have here to put it in. If we go with too large of a one, then the head of the wide part, is going to be too big to sit in there. It's going to look weird. All right, so I got it in there. It fit pretty good. You can see now it does turn a little bit in here, but keep in mind, this is just for, I mean, I can't pull this thing off of here. I keep trying to pull it off. You're not going to have this movement, obviously, when it's happening. But yeah, this looks like the perfect size, and you can see it goes right in that orifice there, the head of it. So it ought to be pretty clean, and it's black, so it shouldn't be any problem. And like I said, if I need to remove this, I would just kind of grind down that little head right there, and right there is where I'd stick the drill in to drill it out. So there we go. All right, so this is the idea. So the rivet's in there. See how the head is just right for that port, that receptacle there? Same thing here. It's just right. Now, what I'm going to do is behind here, I got a small little gap, but mainly what I'm going to do is all along here, they do include that trim that's there. And when I use that on the back side of this thing, I'll show you. Like on the back side of here, right here, this place here, right along here, I'm going to use that 3M double-sided tape, which is this stuff right here. They sell it in a thinner version. That's what I'm going to use. But I'm going to use that to give it some more grip and hold so that it'll hold nice and firm on there. But yeah, that's pretty much, that's how we're going to mount the thing up there. Okay guys, so as you can see, this is the first one that I've got, I say, done. It's really crudely fit. As you can see in the back, I've got the wheel exposure, like what I was talking about earlier. And keep in mind, I still got to do the alignment on the thing, so that camber that you're seeing there will come out a little bit. This isn't a track car, so I don't need a whole lot of, you know, out of the norm camber. I did put all 4 camber bolts in because of the lowness of the car. I don't know if I'll need them or not. But you can see the camber's leaning in at the top, and so it'll come out a little bit. The clearance that I have underneath the car should be enough to, you know, keep any kind of bumps and stuff from jetting this up into this thing. We'll see. I've got enough rolling clearance, that's for sure. I can fit a finger, no problem. It gets a little tighter right here, but it's still far enough away. I can still fit a finger in between there. Like I was talking about, this is the junction here, and I'm going to clean this up and sand it up. I do have the rivets in here, these plastic rivets. They mount really solidly. Originally, I tried to use these, the 5x15.8s. They just weren't long enough here to give any kind of real draw down crush. So I got them in there, they fit good, but they just didn't hold that well. So I had to go with a 6.3 by 25.2, and this gave me the kind of crush or the mushroom head that would need to be happening on this side of it. And so even without that, I mean, this is real sturdy. I would trust this driving down the road. Very, very sturdy. So the one thing that we have to worry about here is I'm going to try to clean up the gap as much as I can to make it as clean as I can. The goal was to get a gap about like that. You can see the lines that I drew on here. I actually, as I put this on there, my first line I drew was not the right line, and so I drew a second line there, which you can see I hugged it as close as I could there. But in the end, it terminates right down here with the lip. Okay, so these rivets, when I get to the point, I'm going to be putting that guard, the border I talked about. So here's like this is the piece I cut out, and I was just testing the heads of these things to see which would work best. The smaller one didn't do. You can see here how it kind of gave me more. On the other ones, I only had really one of them holding on, so it wasn't that tight at all. But this is nice and firm. I mean, I can turn it this way, but I try to pry that away from there. It's on there very tightly. This is that seal that I'm talking about, and of course, it's just meant to go. It's got the double-sided tape on here, so when I get this on the lip, this then adds another level of seal onto it, so I shouldn't have to worry about too much on that. The question is, how do you take care of this uneven, I'll show you, like, you see how far up this one's sticking up than this one? How do you fix that? I have an idea. This is just some aluminum bar. It's a 8-inch thickness, and it's 1 inch wide by 36 inches long. This is, I think I've cut, this might be the original one. I might have used some of it before. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a hook, a real aggressive hook, like almost like the letter V on this end. And I'm going to shove that up into here, and I'm going to epoxy this side of it here to the bumper cover. And then the straight is going to conform to this here. And I'm going to epoxy it to this. So I should at that point be able to make small adjustments by bending it up and bending it down. It should be real, you know, it should bend pretty easy up and down. I won't need to do it here. This is really, I might do it still because I might, instead of having to bend this one up quite a bit, I may be able to bend this one up just a little bit and then bend this one down just a little bit to get the gap right. But right now, if you look, I need to come in with a sander and sand out this area right here. It's got like a little ridge here to give it more of an equal gap. But I wanted to get these two things more even so that I know, see, as I close it down, that gap kind of disappears more. So I need to sand a little bit more. But I would say right between here and here, I need to sand it a little bit more to get the gap more uniform. Okay, so, but like I said, that rubber seal is going to go all the way around here. And so that's my goal. Now, I've seen some of these kits at car shows and stuff like that. Unless the kit was made for the car, yeah, these things are just a part of what you can't avoid. You're not going to have perfect fitment on it. But I think, all in all, I mean, I think it looks pretty decent. Then, of course, from the back, And the real way to tell it, you see that light gap in between there, in between the two. So I hope to be able to bring this down some right here and kind of hide that some. You see, like bring it down some more like that. So we'll see. And once I'm done with this, I'll pull it all back off, take the blue tape off, let the whole reason the blue tape's on here was to let the kit conform to the body. This thing had been sitting up in the attic for quite some time, and the length of these pieces, they twisted like a Twizzlers, and the thing held that shape. So I needed to get it mounted on here, get it fitted on here. I didn't have any instructions or directions, so with this thing being mangled like it was just pretty tough figuring out how it actually fit. I actually got on Wings West site and zoomed in on the picture of the car. It's a red one, everyone's probably seen it, and saw how the front, whether that side was the front or this was the front, because if this was the front, it'd be on the other side and vice versa. But this is supposedly how the kit's supposed to go on. And I had to do that in order to get the exhaust tips put on correctly. So yeah, some stuff is just being delayed for that reason alone. You have to get this done before you go do that. And you may have this other part ready to go, but you can't until you get this other part done. It's just steps in the process. So hopefully this thing is up high enough. If not, I can raise it. I'll just use this as the pivot point. And when I say high enough, I mean to keep from, you know, contacting this in case I hit a deep enough pothole or whatnot. I can use this as the pivot, take all these others out, raise it just a little bit to maybe come up to this line. And just enough to clear it. And then, of course, drill new holes. That means the other holes that I drilled are going to be underneath here and you won't be able to see them. So obviously this is just a real rough fit of it, and I think once it's done it'll look pretty good. I mean, I'm kind of a stickler for details and stuff. Or I may leave this like this and just come up on the spring back here. I could do that. That would be something as well. So anyway, you can see I'm working on the front. I get some ideas on that, and I'll post them up as soon as I got a change.